The LAUNCHPAD, creating a healthier, stronger athlete and human. Andrew Harvot, engineer, inventor, owner. Dan Palacios, coach, innovator, promoter. I had the pleasure of chatting with two incredible innovators in the fitness world, Andrew Harvot of Advanced Muscle Mechanics and Daniel Palacios, aka Kinetic Coach Dan. Trust me, this is one conversation you don't want to miss. Revolutionizing the bench press. Andrew blew my mind with his ergonomic upgrade to the standard bench press. Imagine a bench that actually fits the natural curves of your body. Goodbye shoulder and spine strain. This is not just a tweak, it's a game changer for athletes and gym goers alike. And I'll have you know, I use this myself every single time I train on any kind of bench. A meeting of minds. Dan's journey in promoting cutting-edge training tools led him to Andrew, and together they're tackling the fitness industry's overlooked problems. Their collaboration birthed the LAUNCHPAD into the mainstream, a tool that's transforming how we train. The LAUNCHPAD, a leap forward. This isn't your average gym accessory. The LAUNCHPAD is a portable marvel that adapts to any bench, enhancing your movement, reducing injury risk, and boosting performance. I can speak to that myself. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, this tool is a must-try. Beyond muscle, a neurological edge. We dove deep into how the LAUNCHPAD isn't just about muscle activation, it's about proprioception and neurological impact. For those in high-stakes environments like the military or first responders, this could be the edge you need. Resources at your fingertips. Andrew's not just about innovation, he's about education. Check out the Advanced Muscle Mechanics website and YouTube channel for a treasure trove of how-tos and tips on making the most of the LAUNCHPAD. A mission to strengthen and support. Andrew and Dan are on a mission to create healthier, stronger communities from schools to the front lines. Their passion for fitness goes beyond the physical, it's about mental health and genuine connections. Authenticity is key. In a world full of sales pitches, Andrew and Dan stand out with their heartfelt advice and authentic desire to help. They remind us that patience, relationships, and staying true to your mission are the real muscles behind success. I'm beyond excited to support their vision and connect them with others who can amplify their impact. If you're as intrigued as I am and was, tune into the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast to hear the full story of the amazing guests on here. Stay safe, stay curious, and as always, thank you for tuning in. You can find Andrew and the LAUNCHPAD at the links below in the show notes, or if you're listening, advancedmusclemechanics.com, on Insta, Advanced Muscle Mechanics, and on YouTube, again, links below, Advanced Muscle Mechanics LLC. And Dan, of course, is on Insta at Live Kinetically. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from hownotodie.com.au. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by these guys, mystate.com, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients, it provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to a returning guest and a new guest, Andrew Harvot, Daniel Palacios. Great to see you both. Thank you for making the time, and welcome back to the show, Dan, and welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Damien. Appreciate you having us.
As always, it's a pleasure, sir. Love working with you. It was a great time last time, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more fun talking about some of the specifics and getting into the nitty-gritty details of the Advanced Muscle Mechanics LAUNCHPAD and all that it has to offer.
Look, you guys got a great topic of conversation. I'll preface this to the listeners and the viewers. I will try my best to work with two guests. As you guys know, I've had up to three Delta guys here, but it's a tough one because you ask a question, you got to give a lot of time there. So, Andrew, Advanced Muscle Mechanics. Now, I feel like a little bit of a fanboy because I actually saw the LAUNCHPAD around about 8-10 months ago. I think you were at a backstage at an event, maybe the Arnold's or some strongman. I saw what you guys are doing, and I kind of tried to make my own. But you explained it really, really well. we're going to dive into the
Mhm.
Launchpad and then how you guys connected. But for the listeners, just give us an idea of your sort of background, Andrew, from education into the training coaching sphere, and then what you're doing now with, as you see in the background, the advanced muscle mechanics.
Sure. It's pretty straightforward. I'll try to keep it short because I tend to carry on a bit, and just give me the nudge if it takes too long. Um, as far as myself is concerned, I come from a family that's pretty heavily involved in sports growing up. Played baseball, football. We didn't have rugby, unfortunately, when I was younger. But at the college level, when I went to Texas Tech, we did. It was a club sport though, surprisingly. So I guess it was still picking up popularity here in the States. But that being said, strength and conditioning always was a big part of my life. I'm not the most towering figure. Dan will tell you, I'm not at all towering, as a matter of fact. But I always made up for it by being faster or stronger. So I know in sports, I had to have an edge, and that if you have that edge, you get playing time. And so I always put my effort into being stronger and faster than those around me, and that carried with me and up until now. But it really established my love for, I guess you could say, fitness at that point where that's where I discovered it. I dabbled into powerlifting a little bit in high school, but again, like I described with rugby, it was just more of a club sport. It wasn't a full school sponsored event.
Yeah.
And I never really took it seriously because, and I regret that now, but looking back, they always say hindsight's 2020, I guess for a reason. But looking back, you have to stay within a weight class to be competitive. And my goal was always bigger, faster, stronger, So if I could do something about it, if I couldn't grow taller, I was going to grow wider, I guess. And I was going to be stronger than everybody. And I managed to do that pretty well. I tended to be one of the stronger folks for my age group, my class, so on and so forth. And that carried with me moving into my adulthood. But um, my love for strength and conditioning ultimately laid the groundwork there for my interest to where I kind of, I guess you could say, almost the trajectory of where I've landed it as far as my career professionally and as a hobby there, I guess you could say with strength and conditioning at starting out. But needless to say, I went to Texas Tech. I actually started in the field exercise science, but at the time, it wasn't what it is now, where
No,
there is a
it
lot
was
of
very,
jobs.
very old school. I'm thinking we're the same sort of genre there. You had some top people in the college and football
Mhm.
strength and conditioning, but in our realm was more of the bro science with a little bit of
Right.
nerds around it. What you never had, which was interesting, especially how Dan and I were talking off camera before. You don't have the nerds that lift because they're the ones that are really making it now. They're pulling it all together so well.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting you point that out because I guess you could say I am one of those nerds. And long story short, but so I started out in the field of exercise science. I didn't want to be a personal trainer, which is ironic because I ended up kind of going down that route later on just by the luck of the draw, I suppose you could say. But um, I wasn't quite sure what I could do with exercise science, so I ultimately ended up getting out of it, and I got my degree in finance, graduated, so on and so forth. I worked in digital marketing of all things for a very long time, 10 years, and eventually got sick of the high pressure sales environment I was working in and because it was always the what can you do for me lately type deal. It was you never really felt appreciated. That really never bugged me because I've always been a hard worker, but the lack of job security it started to get irritating, and eventually I walked away from it. And then COVID hit, and at that point in time I just got I'd already gotten my personal training certification and nutrition coach certification. So by default, I was kind of leaning towards that. I didn't want to be a personal trainer. I actually wanted to go the coaching route and get my
Yeah.
CSCS. But as I guess they would say, destiny would have it. Everything happens for a reason, and I truly believe that. And when COVID hit, I had more downtime. The gyms were closed. Couldn't really do anything with a personal training certification. So it was the absolute worst time to try and really enter that field and make a splash. So I had more time to reflect on, I guess, my life decisions at that point. And I always kind of took it upon myself. I have a thirst for knowledge, so I always take it upon myself more or less to really try and educate myself in anything that I participate in. And being in strength conditioning, it didn't take much because I always had an interest in it anyways. And I was doing some continuing education, if you will. And it wasn't required by any means because this was advanced stuff. We're looking at like the biomechanics of movement and so on and so forth. And they were actually talking about the chest and the bench press movement specifically. And lo and behold, a light bulb goes off in my head because I sat there and watched a 20-minute video of them showing the complexity of the setup, and all the little cues that you have to keep in mind just to get in the right position and execute correctly. So at that point, the light bulb went off, and I'm thinking, why the hell are we still doing it this way? Why? There's got to be a better way. And then when they started to look at how the shoulder blade is supposed to move and it doesn't, it's like, well, there it is. We're still doing the same thing we've always done. And that's when I decided I'm going to try and make a change here and see what I can do to bring something to market. And I ran with an idea, spent more than a year kind of developing it by hand before I went to an engineer to perfect it. And of course, he gave me a hard time. He was like, "You did it backwards. You're supposed to come to me first." I help you design, you get the finalized materials. And oddly enough, he was a former Russian powerlifter during the height of the Soviet Union
Oh,
for
wow.
their Olympic team. Yeah, so he was a very serious lifter, and he knew exactly what he was looking at the minute I put it in front of him, and it wasn't much talking that had to be done. It was pretty much straightforward from there, and he helped me, bring all the details full circle and get suppliers lined up and, um, you know, take it and run with it essentially.
So,
But
so just to cut in the middle of near the end of that, actually, Andrew, is you essentially redesigned the bench press without
right,
the huge bulk and space that actually takes up. What I loved about what you're saying there
right.
was you had that light bulb moment and you just went, that's sort of, it's not right. It hasn't been done properly. I don't know where the bench press idea came from back in the day, but it's a bit like the dumbbell. I just saw just online the other day where the dumbbell was invented. And the dumbbell was invented for bell ringers, not for actually
Yep.
lifting. So I want to try and control this show so listeners can sort of piece those together. So you've redesigned the bench press, how the body
So
should work. How did you
right.
two how did you two guys connect then, Dan and Andrew? Because
Oh,
I'm intrigued there as well.
so just to kind of wrap up what I was saying there, ultimately, what really the light bulb moment was, there's all these things that we have to do just to get in proper position to lay down
Mm,
and push. And it turned into almost a backward research project where there's actually literal physical problems that go on with the bench itself. So it's not only not designed correctly, and it works against you. And so ultimately, like you said, I redesigned the flat surface that we've been so accustomed to using to be more functional, and work and align you properly throughout the movement. But the story of how Dan and I got together, I'm going to pass it to Dan for that because he's good at telling it, and it's his story has a lot of relevance in how we, over or intersected paths. So I think he's best at telling it. He always tells it good. So go
cool.
ahead, Dan.
Well, how many podcasts do you have before we could get this one through? It all started when I was a young child. No, yeah, no. So I've been, if for those of you who are watching this, if you want to know more about me, you can watch my previous episode with Damien because that'll tell the whole story of what I'm all about. But essentially, what it boils down to me boils down to, for me, is, providing educational and promotional content for specific training tools that I find to be innovative, efficient, effective, mobile, deployable, what have you, and ultimately will help people solve a problem of some kind that's, specific to their needs. And in the case of the LAUNCHPAD and the sort of trajectory of where we finally crossed paths, because we were probably parallel lines running in circles for some time, Andrew, without either of us knowing it. But essentially what happened was, a mutual friend of ours, and I'm pretty sure that the only reason Andrew met Eric the trainer was through his new associate, Midwest Kong, who's a champion bencher and champion judo. Eric the trainer was really the intersecting point, and God bless his soul, God rest his soul. He passed in November 2022 on Thanksgiving. But all that being said, he was the one that ultimately brought us together. And Eric was a guy who was really all about connecting people and just doing whatever he could to help the world by bringing people together, which was something that I was already very interested in through what I was doing. And so Eric had invited me out to his gym for the LA Fit Expo, just to come and hang out, be in the gym, record videos, meet people, talk to people, learn about what it is he does there, and what we could do together, personally, between Eric and I. And so after one of the days at the expo, Eric texts me. He's like, "Hey, you got to come by. You got to meet these guys." I was like, "All right, I'm coming by anyway. I'm getting over as fast as I can in LA traffic, which is way worse than Miami traffic, by the way." And so it took me a little bit longer than I would have liked. And I get there, and I see this real big guy, a bunch of real big guys, much bigger than any of the celebrities that were in. Not to take away from any of Eric's celebrities, but Midwest Kong, he's just a force, right? And Sam, they're just big dudes. And this was right around the time I had, relatively recently had a shoulder injury from a bad re-rack. I used to have a really janky rack back here that just wasn't the right kind of rack, but it's what I had and it's what worked. But I missed the re-rack, and I had to pull 185 pounds on a cambered bar back on one side, and it really yanked my shoulder pretty good. So I was in the midst of kind of rehabbing that and getting the strength back in that shoulder, and had long been thinking about ways to really improve the bench press, and for me, make it quote unquote more therapeutic beyond stuff like using a Bosu ball, using just dumbbells or what have you. And I've long known that the bench press itself was problematic because of the materials and the way it's designed. And to answer your question, by the way, it was George Hackenschmidt who started floor benching at first, way back in the 1800s. And the guy was a monster, by the way. He benched like 345 or something the first time he did it off the floor. It's crazy. But that being said, I see Andrew and Midwest Kong and all his guys in there with this LAUNCHPAD. And I walked right over and I said, "Oh, I know exactly what that is. Let's record a video." And it was great, because immediately I was able to put it on one of Eric's benches, and it was actually a really cool bench because you could swing the rack out and then re-rack, and it would drop back while you were on it. So it was really cool.
We've got one of those where I train. They're great.
Yeah, right. So it was like where innovation meets innovation, right? And just all of it just was so perfect. And I still have the old video. I can show that to you. So I sat down, explained it exactly what I knew it to be, and I think I saw 3 jaws hit the floor, because we knew it was in perfect alignment, perfect synchronicity, and it was not for like any special knowledge of my own. It was just like the way that it perfectly aligned was amazing. And what I can tell you from that experience was, I had spent a few days up to that point working out in Eric's gym on that very same bench, and I was working my shoulder and it felt pretty good, but I immediately felt how much harder the weight was to push from the LAUNCHPAD, and I knew why. It was because of the positioning, allowing my shoulders to move the way that they're designed to. They don't get that artificial bracing from the bench, and therefore my stabilizers had to work harder. And within just a few sets of benching on the LAUNCHPAD, warming up and priming on the LAUNCHPAD, I took it off, and that same weight was just flying. And and I knew the concepts behind what was necessary there. I didn't know, and what was so surprising for me, I didn't know how impactful it would be when you remove the launch pad, and now suddenly that artificial brace is there, but your stabilizers are more engaged and more prepared to do their job as well. And it's just this, I mean, just explosion of improved performance on the bench press as a, let's call it a testing exercise, right? You know, so if you were to test your bench press in the competition environment or in a combine type environment, you would use the launch pad to prepare for that. That way your testing weights are that much easier. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and with extended exposure to the launch pad and working with it, not only is my shoulder so much better, but I'm starting to get much closer to getting back to my previous PRs and well beyond that with a much, what feels like a much healthier shoulder.
Let's take a
Right.
pause
Yeah.
there. Let's take a pause there on the explanations. You said, Dan, and you kind of alluded to it, Andrew, solving problems. And Andrew, you were talking about, you know, COVID gave you the opportunity. That's paraphrasing. I apologize if I get it wrong, but it gave you the time and space to work on what you were doing. I've had so many people say that same thing, so many guests this year. It looks like it did give us a chance to work on the business, not in the business, air quotes for those that are on the video. And it's clever. It did allow a lot of thought process to go on. Some people were just, okay, how can I reconfigure my career like you do? But some people are, how can I reconfigure business? But I love the fact that you guys have both talked about solving problems that often we don't know we had. So Dan, if you hadn't had that injury, you probably wouldn't have known you sort of had a problem that you needed to fix. But then you also talked about this has made you better than you were because those muscles are working. So let's step off there. Solving a problem you didn't know you had. You were talking, both you guys, the bench press is fairly limited. I remember this would seem normal to you, but pretty out there for the listeners. I remember 10 years into lifting, we were taught not to bring the bar back any more than your own fist away. And that was an innovative thing. But thinking about it, you're trying to fix a bad situation with a limitation. So let's dive into the launch pad itself, which I wanted to hold back to this point. You've said those scapula were stuck, their shoulder blades were completely stuck on the bench press. Andrew, you actually had an injury that was seeing that occur, and it wasn't working very well. You're solving a problem you guys sort of knew was out there, but how did you? What is it that you've actually made, Andrew, and what are you seeing come out of that with the athletes?
The easiest way to put it, what I like to call it, is an upgrade to the bench, an ergonomic upgrade. So when you look at anything else that you sit on, even a car seat, you look at the curvature of the back, the way the shoulders are shaped. They're there for a reason. You know, that's to cradle your body and so that it interacts with it and provides you the most comfort. And your spine is obviously, it's curved. You know, it's not flat. So that was the biggest thing right away for me is, okay, if we have to do all of this just to attempt to keep our shoulder safe and mitigate a problem that we're all aware of, then why has no one ever attempted to make a change here? Are the equipment manufacturers ignoring it? Or is it one of those situations where nobody questioned it because, like Dan has put it before, you can bench for quite a long time sometimes and get away with it, but it's usually just a matter of time. And there it is. Dan's holding it up. Essentially, what it is, just a long story short, here is an addition to the flat bench that's mobile and deployable, works on any bench. It could be a competition Olympic, it could be an adjustable bench, it could be an incline. It doesn't matter. Even machine benches where they're plate loaded, it works on those just as well because they all have that same problem. The surface is exactly the same as it's been since we started doing the movement, and it sandwiches the shoulder blade. And when you put extra stress on the shoulder and it's not moving the way it's designed to move and transfer force, it's a ticking time bomb. So what I designed was a surface that is more dynamic, that allows the shoulder blade, that accommodates the natural movement of the shoulder blade, and positions you so that your body is aligned and supported, and it keeps you safe in the process, while allowing your shoulder blade to actually function the way nature designed. So you're getting a more efficient movement, a deeper range of motion. You're engaging the stabilizing structure that accommodates, or that accompanies, the prime movers, and it's a win-win situation. It'll keep you safer in the process. So that's the long and short of it. But there's a number of different curves built into it. One in the lumbar spine to support the lumbar spine. And then, because what that does is actually help push the sternum up and align you properly, so that you're recruiting more of your chest, like a power lifter will do when they do the arch. They do it for a reason. They may do it excessively because they're also trying to shorten the movement. But when you're properly aligned, your sternum is actually facing towards the direction of force, because that allows you to recruit more of your chest, and you're stronger there. So I wanted people to just be able to lay down, hit the movement without having to be extremely educated or extremely experienced, and not have to worry about their shoulders anymore, and be able to continue coming into the gym and seeing results, instead of having to worry about the day that they're going to be another statistic, essentially.
I'm just going to jump
So,
in there, Andrew. There's three things to unpack, and I bet you didn't realize that because of what you just said. But I think on the listener's point of view, so one, our emails back and forth between all this, you were talking. I think Dan was talking about rehabbing the shoulder as you train. I found that a little bit difficult to digest, but now Dan's explained it with the stabilizing muscles. Makes sense. I'm going to delve into that. And then two, what you were saying there about the beginner. I've been a trainer. I was actually one of the first personal trainers in the world before personal training was a thing. They franchised it at Les Mills. The hardest thing for me to teach anybody, and this is really for listeners, was the bench press. I can teach you how to squat because I just say sit in the chair and stand up. Sit in the chair, stand up, and now here's a bar and so on and so on. But the bench press is the strangest thing. They're like baby horses just
right.
come out of just been born, right? So
I say this all the time, Dan. It's
yeah.
you tell them to do something, you're going to do the opposite every single time. And
So that's
it's
interesting that
frustrating.
this is not advanced muscle mechanics, but it's actually useful for beginners, not only in training the correct musculature, as you said, with the scapula and the supporting muscles that you said, Dan, but actually easier to get the skill, the movement of the bench press for a beginner.
Right. And another big aspect of it, Damien, is when you're using a flat bench, you're actually teaching your body to be dysfunctional.
Oh,
So it's interfering with the proper movement pattern. So you're teaching your body an improper motor pattern. And as well as I do, as soon as you groove a motor pattern, it's extremely hard to overcome, especially if it's a faulty one.
well,
So
Chick used
this
to
what
say, Chick used to quote numbers. I think Poliquin was the source, 500 times, no, 300 times to learn a new movement, but 2,000 times to unlearn a bad one.
Yeah, I couldn't be more spot on too, because as soon as it's unconscious behavior at that point once you groove it. So you have to have something that's going to make you physically aware almost that you're not doing it correctly. And that's exactly what the LaunchPad does. It will help you. It provides proprioceptive feedback in real time while you're actually executing. So you can make the proper necessary corrections right on the spot. It'll carry over the minute you take it off and go back to the flat if you are.
Which
We have our own.
you can't really do that in the middle of a bench press. And I did say there was three things
Right.
to unpack. The last one there is the combination of both of those is the rehabbing it as you're working for an injury, and I can see how that works now. There's the beginners, but then the benefit that you spoke of and also Dan was, hang on a sec, you use the launch pad, you're getting all the stabilizing musculature that you don't get. Essentially, they become numb and detrained in a bench press. You're getting those up to speed. So when you do it, you go and do, if you're going to do a competitive bench press, you're actually better than you were. So there's three aspects of the launch
Right.
pad that you've spoken about.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because I say this. I could shout from the damn rooftops to power lifters like, hey man, you want to blow up your bench press on the platform, use this to warm up, especially, but use it in your training. it's like using a camber bar, but it also trains all of the proper structures too, and develops them in the meantime. So you're not having to worry about injury, but you're also getting that additional training effect, training a deeper range of motion, but also training the stabilizing structures that assist the prime movers and obviously keep you healthy too. So
I'm very
that I'm
interested to
glad.
see. I'm very interested to see when Squat University picks this up, because Squat University, and I don't know the guy's name. I apologize to him. He's got great content. He'll show him.
I think it's Aaron Horchak or
Aaron
something
Horchik.
along
Okay.
those
Yeah.
lines.
He'll show a movement like a squat or a lunge or a bench press, and then go, right, now you've got to do all these fancy exercises to fix the injury to go and do that thing in the
Yes.
gym. The last thing that you spoke on, Andrew, or that I'd like to unpack is, this is throwing it out there. You know, a guy out there has come up with an idea, but it's not just intellectual. So you invented this, but you took it to a guy who was a power lifter, and B, Russian. Now, I've got
Right.
Russian and Eastern European friends, and they do not suffer fools. You will know in their first sentence if you're screwing something up. So you went to somebody, this is what they do, and then you literally found the most blunt person in the world, or blunt race in the world.
Oh yeah.
So to validate what you're doing, and he's saying, hey, we've been looking for this for so long.
Essentially, yeah. I didn't have to say a whole lot. He knew exactly what he was looking at. He obviously very, very smart guy, being an engineer. He's actually even done work for NASA since he moved from the Soviet Union here to the United States. But so that's ironic in itself. But yeah, like you said, there's no explanation needed whatsoever. He knew, and he was actually he has one himself too. So there you go.
So Dan,
So
you
that
you haven't invented this. You're not selling it. You've got it there in your hand, which is great. And for the listeners that aren't the viewers, please check out the photos and check out the video. Dan, can you describe what you got in your hands there, the different curves, and how it's benefited you and your gym? And this was not around when we did our show, and you do bring innovative solutions to problems in your strength and conditioning coaching. So what have you got there? Because I've never had the chance to actually have a product on the show.
Yeah. So, if I may do my little QVC QVC sales pitch here, what you have here is the LaunchPad, right? And let me tell you, if there's ever a battle testing battleground, a trial by fire situation, it's out here on the farm, because everything rusts here in the South Florida heat and humidity. There's nothing that will be foregone in that effort. So you see, for me, like I said, a lot of my criteria is, mobility, deployability, innovative, efficient, effective. And what you have here is a folding mechanism in the LaunchPad. I literally just peeled this off the back of my my bench right here, right?
Yep.
So you can see that's my back pad right there.
Thank you.
And it fits perfectly there. I can easily take it off. I can strap it back down. There are straps. You can see the grooves here. So you can slip the straps through there, strap it to any bench. I actually use it on the floor as well for floor bench, for especially my home gym. And then you can see these cambered edges or chamfered edges here that allow your shoulder blade to move past that, and essentially allows for that kinesthetic awareness that you develop through the bench. Now, when you're benching on the LaunchPad, you can feel if you're not in the right position. It'll be a lot more uncomfortable, because I don't know if you can hear that.
It's
right, but that's pretty hard, pretty
community.
dense rubber.
I call it equivalent of truck tire rubber. It's high density polyurethane, but it's tough. And go ahead, Dan. I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good. This is your baby, your brainchild. So, and then the backside here is hard
Anodized aluminum.
The anodized aluminum. There you go. Right. So, this is a really well designed product, and that was what was one of the things that was also so surprising to me, was being that it's a relatively new product, or was when I first got my back on it. Was how polished and well engineered it was, because I see a lot of prototypes and I see a lot of products that are past the prototyping stage, but now they're, the company is trying to sell it, what have you. And there's still a lot of retooling and reworking that needs to be done. This thing is ready to go, ready to roll. And it can be like that and never be changed for a very long time now.
Yeah.
We've made probably the most impact you can make on the bench press movement itself, in something that fits into a gym bag and will last you forever once you have it. So you could definitely hang your hat on, Andrew, on the fact that you made something that is really is an heirloom type product. I could pass this down to my son and he could pass it down to his son, and they're going to have it for a long time coming and much healthier shoulders than any of us.
That's
I'm
great.
honored and humbled, to say the least. Go ahead, Damien.
Hey, thank you for the explanation, Dan, and yeah, thank you, Andrew. It reminds me of Brian Hennessy. He's invented the Henny attachment and invented the Squat Max MD. They were there to solve problems that he found. You, Andrew, started off with your background. He was not the biggest. He was not the fastest. He was he ended up being a great NFL player, which was great. But he invented those things after his injuries. He's invented them to fix problems that he had. And people like that, I'm literally thinking as I'm talking, that they're doing it for themselves for the right reasons. They invent something, Dan, that doesn't need to get fixed. They invent something that will hit the ground running. So that was a space, the bench press space, that was just not looked at. And I can see where the light bulb moment kicked off for you, Andrew. The portability part, or deployable, that you said, Dan, really good. And I won't mention the teams we're speaking with in the future, but really good for traveling teams. Now, people don't realize when they watch their little sport on TV, and I say that a little bit cheekily, not facetiously, because when I watch my rugby team, the All Blacks, until I interviewed I interviewed both the coaches now. I didn't realize that they spent 70% of their time this season traveling. Probably the same thing with even just American football. They're not always going to be a home game. They're going to spend time traveling. And I'll never forget Nick Gill, the strength and conditioning coach for the All Blacks, saying sometimes they'd be in a gym and the guys couldn't even shoulder press because the ceiling was too low in that gym in France or wherever they were. So they had to improvise.
It would be France, wouldn't it? It would be France.
Yeah, exactly. Don't mention the war. So really clever that you got something you can take, because they can't take the gym. I mean, they've got a great gym at home. I mean, imagine going to the Dallas Cowboys. It's the first thing I thought of. Their strength and conditioning gym is perfect for them, but not when you're traveling. You're in some crazy hotel gym. So what you've got there,
right?
That and also the Henny is a completely portable system. You can still take what you need with you.
Right. That's a great point, because what's so awesome about it, I guess, if you will, is, I designed it to work for multiple exercises too. So we're not just talking about the bench. If you were to lay face down, you'll see a downward sloping curve above the logo portion. And that's to put your chin to properly align your spine and allow you to do back movements like a seal row or other things. So it increases the range and the tension on your back, but also keeps you properly aligned there too. So we wanted to have it be multifaceted there, and not just be a one trick pony, if you will.
Let me dive into that, because this is an organic conversation. I literally had no idea about that. I do exercises face down on the floor and my chin's up. I was just watching a shoulder rehab exercise just yesterday that I work with now, and my chin's up. So you're saying the chin can come down, but, and this is a big one that not many people out there know, when they're laying prone, especially females, they got that anterior pelvic tilt, the duck butt, air quotes. And I physically had that from bodybuilding. So I have to squeeze my glutes and rotate my pelvis. I know what that lumbar curvature is on your LAUNCHPAD. That would actually help that sit better, and I wouldn't have pain laying face down in my back so much. So that's just blown my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you think about how you execute any pulling movement, you want a slight protraction so that you have tension on the back when you start the movement.
Yes.
So I designed it to help you execute properly on a pulling movement too. So whether you're doing a press or a pull, it's gonna force you to execute properly. You don't have a choice,
So
and you're not gonna be able to
and
get
the
it.
floor game as well. So that it's not just limited to the bench. Like Dan said, he does it for his floor benching too. So you're not just limited to that one
Yep.
piece of equipment.
Absolutely. And because the common denominator here is posture. Posture means correct joint alignment and proper biomechanics. So if your posture is on, your setup's on, your execution is going to be on. And so I wanted to take that out of the equation for everybody, because that's, I think, where everybody fails, is they miss the most basic element. That's just setup and proper bracing or stabilization. So they're jumping on an exercise they're not even ready for, essentially.
That's the
And this,
soundbite. That's the
so
soundbite right there, Andrew. That's literally a perfect description of why this is required to retrain both neurologically and also physically, and how it can enhance performance. That's literally the great description there of what you just said.
yep, it's been a learning experience, to say the least, because everybody's knowledge level is a little different. Their experience is a little different. Some people, I mean, they don't even care about the bench. It's okay, great. Well, this works for everything. You want to get better bicep tension on an incline bicep curl with dumbbells, or that it keeps your shoulders in the proper position. You can't put your shoulders in the wrong position doing that, or any movement, even like a tricep extension where you're laying back doing a skull crusher or something along those lines. Even the auxiliary movements, it's going to make them more effective and put you in better position across the board.
There's a
So
great quote from some of the strength coaches, and I think Chick would have used it from one of them. Actually, I think he did from Poliquin again, as you can't shoot a cannon from a canoe, meaning an
yep,
unstable
exactly.
surface, an unstable body, you can't express force. Look, we've gone through those aspects. I'd like to hear, because you did allude to that a little bit in some of our communication back and forth, guys, is some of the people that are using this. And that's a lot of the time why people see something and go, I would like that because that person's using it. I was the same. I didn't know who those big guys were backstage doing these bench presses. I'm sure it was the Arnolds, but I went, I want that thing.
It,
They're saying it's
it
good.
was,
So
not to, I didn't mean to interrupt there, Damien. I apologize. I think it's the LA Fit Expo, actually, because that
yeah,
was where we recorded back with
you're right.
with
Yes.
Kyle, his strength. So
So
that would
let's
be
talk
my
about
guess.
who. Let's talk about who's
Go
using
ahead.
this. Who's it in the hands of?
Well, so we've got quite a few people, and if you're talking influencers, I could go on about them. We've got Gunnar Peterson, big time strength conditioning. We've got Matt Wenning actually has one. Mike O'Hearn has one. CT Fletcher. You've got Jeff Lavecchio. He trains a lot of hockey players and teams out of the St. Louis area. He's got some. He's got five actually. And then, just there's a handful of schools and colleges, but just one notable one, just in terms of keeping things productive here. Florida State, obviously everyone kind of knows who the Seminoles are. They've got a whole lineup of them. And I've been working with Coach Storms there. He's a real great guy. And then Dan, I'm kind of drawing a blank there. I should be prepared for that question because I've been asked it a lot.
Well,
Just lose track.
a really big one, and to a note that you brought up earlier, Damien, this guy named Joel Seedman, and if you've seen any of his stuff,
All
he's a
right.
really smart guy. He knows what he's doing when it comes to marketing, what it is he does, his methodology, and he very much subscribes to the idea of 90 degrees, a lot of isometric work, maximizing muscle tension at certain positions, what have you. And he loved the pad for the reason that it does intuitively coach even a newbie into being in the right position, so then they can still focus on getting into what he believes and has established through his knowledge base as a neuromuscular doctor and understanding at a very deep level what the body goes through neurologically, that this is the way to do it. And so regardless of whether you subscribe to that 90-degree rule or even just holding the bar or bringing it all down to your chest, pausing, what have you, the LAUNCHPAD still serves all of those methodologies because you're still addressing the instability that the LaunchPad creates, establishing a better position for your shoulder stabilizers to turn on and function rep after rep after rep, workout after workout. And as you continue to exponentially increase that strength over time, the baseline readiness from just bench pressing on the LaunchPad alone becomes that much more responsive. And that's what we want out of any tissue system, right? Is to make it as responsive and accessible as often as we can possibly get. And so, Seidman is a great example of that. And another guy is JL Holdsworth, right? Former top guy over at Westside Barbell, top of his game, ended up having some injury issues. He can tell you all of his story, created a system in conjunction with another major Olympic coach, guy named Cal Dietz, triphasic training. You can read all about Cal and what he knows, but they came up with a system around neurological resetting of the neurological system called RPR. JL Holdsworth immediately got it, immediately loved the LaunchPad for what it could do, and immediately understood it because they understand the neurological impact of body positioning preceding performance. And when you get that, and you have the right tools to execute on that, you can be much more efficient and effective. And on a similar note, Damian, like you were saying, with the LaunchPad being so travel ready, like you said, many times you end up in a hotel gym as an athlete with very limited just sheer weight, right? They might have only up to 50 pounds. So you can get a lot of benefit out of taking a LaunchPad onto the floor or into one of the junky little benches they have in a hotel gym, use those 50-pound dumbbells and do a single arm hold at 90 degrees and get tremendous neurological benefit out of that without wearing out the tissues when you're about to go play a game the next day. You can get it all engaged, you can get it all primed up and ready to perform without just burning the engine and ripping the muscles apart just for the sake of doing so, to say you be able to go, get a workout on the road before a game. That's not the goal for an elite athlete. An elite athlete needs to be prepared to perform, but they need to maintain their body during that process, especially as the season gets longer and longer. And that's what something like the LaunchPad will allow you to do for your shoulders, be much more impactful and efficient and effective about that process.
Right. And I think what Dan's kind of alluding to there is it properly loads the joints so you're more injury resilient too. So, I mean, one of the biggest things Kyle Young at Kabuki Strength talked about, if you're a wrestler or a football player, right, like a lineman, and someone gets in on you real close, you're owned. They get you elevated, especially of wrestling, you're done. But if you train with something that's going to allow you a deeper range of motion, then you're stronger than your opponent from a deeper range of motion as well. But the key is doing it safely, and that's what the LaunchPad allows. That and obviously keeping the joints moving and more mobile as a result as well, because you're developing more injury resilience when they're being properly loaded through their full range.
Yeah, of course. I was just thinking the same thing. We talked about that the actual person's own fist distance away from the chest on the bench press. What about when someone puts me in an arm bar? What about when I get wrenched back by something? You literally did, Dan. You literally said that actually happened in an accident with the bar, and you're just not you're not exposed, you're not resilient, and you've never been in that position. And of course, it's likely to break. Two things that you both spoke about. One, you use some fancy words there, Dan. You started using neurological. That's a big word. So I'll add to that. I'd love to see Mr. EMG, my friend Rowan Ellis, start to do some studies with this. He did some. He sent a unit over to Tyler Schwartz, who's in the strength and conditioning space in Arizona, just looking at difference in some exercise with bands and weights, which is really cool. I'd love to see him show some of the EMG, the surface EMG results of this versus the bench press versus the dumbbell versus the press ups. But also what you said was the warm-ups for athletes before they go in the field. Again, funnily enough, I was watching some of the All Blacks coaching on the day of the game. Some guys actually benefit from warming up those muscles, from getting everything fired up, and of course they go on the field and warm up a lot beforehand. But this is quite a clever way of doing it with a lighter weight, as you say, Dan. to not at all fatiguing them, but they're primed and ready. So like you said, Andrew, because that's a fight, that's a wrestle, that's a real
Right.
physical
They're
sport.
going to battle together, you know.
Yeah. And so what a great way to wake up and warm up. And again, as you both said, it's portable. You can take that underneath in the warm up area, underneath the stands, and actually get something going that's going to enhance performance.
Absolutely. I think that's where it kind of carries over even into our brothers and sisters in the armed services. You know, that they're so used to, they have so much equipment, they got to ruck around all the time. They got to maintain a very strong, injury resilient body as well. And the mobility with the LaunchPad alone was a huge benefit to them. And Dan, I know you can speak on this because we've talked about it a little bit about some of the impacts it can have.
Before you do,
Yeah,
Dan,
yeah.
let's just Dan, before you do that, let me create a bridge there to that. So yeah, Dan, we know you train elite strength and conditioning athletes, but Andrew, in the special forces, some of the guys may have never bench pressed before. In the military, general military, they may have never bench pressed before, so they're fit and they're passing the physicals. And then, hey, here's a gym with this thing that's a weight and a bench. So what a great way to get these people doing it safely, because what about when the guy injures himself? So just wanted to throw that in there really for the listeners, because they're not all huge guys that are lifting all the time. And then Dan, let's have your take on that as well.
Yeah. So, when it comes to, military, law enforcement, first responders of any kind, you're talking about a career that requires pretty much constant readiness, right? And a tremendous amount of consistent stress from a number of different angles, including just the job itself and any administrative tasks that come along with it. You're often at a desk, in a car, in some kind of a vehicle for long periods of time with lots of gear on your head, neck, and shoulders. And so that does tend to, round you forward quite a bit. Just the sheer pressure, the tactile pressure of a rucksack or any other gear, plate carriers, what have you, tends to naturally incline you towards being forward, which creates a lot of anterior compression, a lot of forward head posture. And so when it comes to training those people, getting them out of that gear is one thing, but then getting the tissues to actually open up and get back into a position that would be more optimal for allowing them to go long periods of time with that added weight. And we're talking upwards of 100 pounds sometimes in added gear, plus now put any kind of jogging force or jumping out of an airplane and hitting the ground and having to tuck and roll kind of situation. That's a lot of force that people don't realize is there. And so we do have to train the war fighter and the warriors and first responders to experience that added load of tension, resistance, what rubber bands, chains, barbells, dumbbells, just sheer explosive force, concussive force, even in a number of ways if we can. And for me, the thing that really flipped the switch as far as military is concerned is a relationship that I have with a gentleman named Major Donald Bigham, who was instrumental in reprogramming the Army MCO TAP-C program for the ACFT program, right? So, the government has billions of dollars that they're dumping into making sure that the H2F program can allocate funds to training our military, and that's going to include bringing in strength conditioning coaches, physical therapists, equipping facilities, building new facilities, revamping old facilities, and bringing in all kinds of equipment. And so the facility they have out at Fort Benning in Georgia is just tons and tons of Sorinex squat racks, platforms, barbells, what have you. And Donnie has, a strength conditioning background because he was the first strength conditioning coach in the Army, who was also enlisted, by the way. So he's Major Donnie Bigham for a reason. He's then done his time. But when it came down to training these athletes for the ACFT, yes, they do push-ups and pull-ups and running and and all the stuff that you would typically see in a boot camp setting, but they use strength conditioning methodology to improve that and make that a much more efficient and effective process. And you better believe bench press is part of it. You know, Donnie himself is a champion bench presser, if that's what you can call them. I don't know if that's the right terminology for that, but certainly, you know, the tactical athlete can benefit from what the LaunchPad does for improving your spinal extension, opening up the range of motion of your shoulders naturally, and not having to overload the joints with unnecessary amounts of weight. You can focus more on that neuromuscular connection, allow the user to actually feel that movement and the stabilizers engaging through it while naturally opening up the chest, the tendons of the pec major, pec minor, anterior delts, and even biceps through that longer range of motion because of what that chamfered edge on the LaunchPad does. So again, naturally, the training itself and the tools we're utilizing for the training should be conducive to improving performance and reducing the risk of injury. And I really and truly believe it's doing that for any military, law enforcement, or first responder that would utilize it, so that when they do get into a situation where they have to move past, you know, that normal range of motion that their gear is forcing them into, their tissues will be far more ready for that and able to handle the added loads of that as well.
I think the big thing here, kind of the long and short of it, the LaunchPad provides essentially a platform that takes conventional exercises and allows you to focus on targeted muscle activation, enhanced proprioception, and, you know, functional movement patterns. That has a lot of carryover into the demands of, you know, obviously military operations, but also the folks in law enforcement, first responders. You know, there's, like Dan was saying, there's a lot of a neurological aspect that goes into this, and the complexity of incorporating that dynamic instability and simulating like an uneven terrain, if you will, allows it to be, because they're, you know, they operated in a very uneven terrain, unpredictable environments. It's going to have a lot more carryover into what they're actually doing or facing out in the real world, you know, because that's key. Like Dan was saying, you want to train just like an athlete, you want to train how you're going to compete at some point. Otherwise, what's the point of your training? So you want to be better, you have to train how you're expected to compete. And
Yeah, exactly.
we need, essentially gives them that option.
Hey, I was just thinking then, as you were talking, Dan, and we talked before about posture, Andrew, I'm not a leg press guy, and I'm not a leg press guy because I used to push horrendously big weights, and of course, being young, I maybe got away with it. But you're in lumbar flexion at the bottom of that under. The loads were huge. I know that we had 500 kilos when we were doing calf raises. But you're pretty much going from neutral to flexed, even just out of neutral. I'm just wondering, for those people out there that are into the gym, seeing you talked about influencers as well, you know, the pure gym only people, not the tactical athletes. It could even work on a leg press, a stable base there as well, and get you into correct posture and give you some more
That's
safety
I
of range
told
of
you
motion,
were going
right?
to like this guy.
Yeah, you literally have I've put it on a leg press and it describes, you just described exactly what is actually goes on. So a lot of actually at the end of the leg press movement there, you know, you get the spinal roll going.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people, they get that pain in their lower back. The LaunchPad's actually it's gonna stop that from happening altogether. And they'll feel like you have more hip extension as well in the movement. So it completely eliminates the lumbar spine problem that you had described. So that's really interesting that you're the first to bring that up, actually. So I got to give props on that. Very, very good. I like how you put that together. That's awesome.
Smarter than I look, but I as Todd Fox said, another guest on the show, we still eat crayons, us basic military guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell you know what's going on though, and that's I think I'm kind of shell shocked here that you just put that together because you're the first.
Well,
I
you
actually
guys,
had to tell people.
but you guys explained it so well. I mean, mine's in the trunk of my car. I picked it up yesterday for the post office. So thank you so much for sending one over. I'm going to get that down to the gym today, and then also use it in my garage gym or backyard gym. But the way you guys have been explaining it, and my role is to interview a guest and talk about their journey and their purpose, and hopefully ask the questions in a way that you give the answer so the listeners can figure it out. So you guys have been explaining that all the time. We touched on a lot of different facets. I sort of paused and translated that a little bit and then asked those questions. But you guys are explaining it in that way. And what I'm a little bit disappointed on is when I saw the Kabuki strength video that you guys did, I was like, okay, single thing, bench press. Well, I might get it, might not, but it just didn't encompass all this. So I would love in the future that there's some 1 minute video, because we know concentration time on the people now that need it is low. A 1 minute video of showing all these different facets. It might be a tactical athlete on the bench press. It might be a Instagram model on the leg press, but it's just explaining it that it can do all these things. And gosh, Andrew, I'm so impressed that you made this thing from that 20-minute light bulb moment. And I want to say congratulations to you, and same to you, Dan, for seeing the value of this and using your platform to promote it, as well as all those people that have got it. So I'm really want to say thank you and kudos to you for what you've created and brought to the market here.
Appreciate that. I'm humbled to say the least, because really it's nothing unless other people recognize the value, and the fact that you guys, if you see eye to eye with you and what I was trying to do, I think that says enough in itself for me. Because like you had described with the training situation, where you want to help people and you try to help people, that's your goal as a trainer, but there's always some disconnect that goes on. And if this can just help people get in better position, which it will, they'll get better results inherently. So but I could do you one better. I have an entire YouTube that's split up between muscle groups with all the different exercises that we have started to put together and compile, because that's a big question. There's so many, I mean, there's hundreds. You can pretty much use it. You can use it for every muscle group. So
It's
only
especially
limited by.
nice. It's especially nice for anything cable related, dumbbell related. That's about, opening up that range of motion. So I will say that, in regards to just being specific to the shoulder itself, but you could talk about putting it on any kind of hip thrust type device. Gunner's guy, Coach Shane, was in there using it for that. You could see what he was doing, big weight on the Nautilus hip thrust with the pad there, and getting you in that right hip extension position and spinal position. I mean, it really is just endless. But just the fact that it's going to dramatically improve your shoulder performance, as well as reducing the risk of injury, and essentially eliminating in a number of ways a lot of the, I don't want to say unnecessary auxiliary exercises. They're not, they're still useful. But certainly you will not have to spend as much time on doing those traditional functional shoulder patterns, because you can really hone in on utilizing the LAUNCHPAD to get your shoulder stabilizers engaged.
Right.
You used a key word there. Use the keyword functional. And I think finally we've got some functional movement that is in each exercise that is relatively complete and whole. Kind of interesting wrap up here, because you've been on the show before and because we're talking about this thing. So you mentioned the YouTube videos, and as I said at the start, the listeners have heard the show notes narrated by me, but where's the best place to find out about the LAUNCHPAD and find those videos, please, Andrew?
Sure. If you want to find out more, we built out an extensive website to kind of talk about it and dive into the details. It's just www.advancedmusclemechanics.com, and you can find the company on Advanced Muscle Mechanics on all platforms. Advanced Muscle Mechanics LLC on YouTube, and then there's more videos, like you said, about how you can use it for different exercises, and there's some explainers that dive into more depth on the science, wide variety of stuff there going on. But It's organized in a way to make it easy to navigate. So if you're just wanting to do upper body, you can focus on that, or you can take it, and run with it any direction that suits your needs there. But it's made to be easy to use and easy to navigate. So if people have questions, definitely check that out. Or I'm always willing to help, and I try to be as responsive as possible. So don't ever hesitate to shoot me a message either. I'm more than
Thank you,
happy to
Andrew.
help.
It's so
Yep.
important. Communication is key, and that's how we managed to meet, because Dan communicated so well to me, and maybe people resonate with certain types of people resonate with Dan, and he's communicating the same outcome as you are or as I am, and for a start, different accents. Now you live kinetically, Dan, on Instagram, and of course we'll put those links in there as well. There's two questions I wrap up a show with, and one is purpose. You guys have kind of said that you're helping people, but Andrew, what's your where to from here? It's 2024, if I've done my maths right. What's your purpose and direction now with the Launchpad? I mean, you guys connected. You're a partnership in a way. What's the direction and purpose for 2024 and on with this?
So the main thing is we want healthier, stronger athletes across the board. So whether that means getting it into schools and helping build the strong foundation from the start, getting it into universities at the college level, even professional sports, and then of course there's other industries like the defense, DoD, brothers and sisters in the armed forces. They think it's very highly applicable to what they need through their training. And of course, you've got the first responders and folks like that also can benefit highly from it. And that's just, there's even more than that, but that's the main focus is there. We're just trying to get it in as many gyms as possible, and then have as many people benefit from it as possible, because we think that we're doing the goal here is to help, and you want to keep people in the gym because that has a direct impact on their mental health. And if you're staying healthy, you're happy, and so on. And it goes full circle. And if the bench press is one of those exercises, this will help them master it. So just
That's interesting, Andrew,
that's
and
it.
I'm really quite pleased, but also a little bit surprised, because we came in here to talk about a product, and Dan had a good joke that doing his best sort of online sales pitch there. But every person that's been on the show, and I had the All Blacks coach Steve Henson on last week, whose show is going to publish soon. Even his goal is just to help. The Sergeant Major of the Army, a Special Forces guy, William Moffat, he's there to serve others. And I did not expect those words from a guy who invented a thing to sell. You invent it for a reason, and you're selling a product because that's your business. Your goal is there to help. And that's why I get people on this show, because if one person is heard in this show is going to help them, we've done our job. So thank you for that. Now I've got a question unrelated to the Launchpad, and it's for both of you because it's my 2024 question. So we'll answer, and I might get Dan to go first because we had Andrew on the spot a ton, and you're doing great, by the way. This question is contextualized. None of us would be here where we are without our experiences so far. But if you could give some advice to your younger self, what would it be? Over to you, Dan.
Be patient, young man.
I like that.
I was not a very patient kid. I don't want to say impulsive, because I wasn't impulsive. I was definitely sort of calculated, but I would allow things to really sort of like boil up inside of me and then just come out as like one big thing, which often led to poor decisions being made. But that being said, patience is definitely something I've learned through this entire process, and building kinetic training and developing relationships with guys like Andrew and so many of these other inventors and people who are really just trying to navigate a really harsh industry and a really saturated industry, where it takes a tremendous amount of patience to remain authentic and provide a truthful and authentic product or service that really does truly help people. Because there's a lot of inauthenticity and there's a lot of untruthful tactics used to just sell whatever in the fitness industry. And when we talk about, what it means to actually help people through strength conditioning, through fitness, it just takes a tremendous amount of patience to continue doing that in a truthful way. And so be patient.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
My advice to my younger self.
Nice.
That's a good one, Dan. I struggle from the patience thing myself. If I were to look back,
I know.
Well, you've been my voice of reason at times. I need to say that. Dan's been a blessing to say the least. And I've learned a lot from him. But if you want me to, do you want me to answer that question,
Yeah,
Damien?
absolutely. Let's go, Andrew.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is talk to people. Don't be afraid to open up, because you never know who that person is. You never know who they're connected to, and that connection could mean everything down the road. So be nice, show respect, and talk to people. That's not something I didn't ever struggle with the respect and being nice to people thing, but I'm more introverted than some. So if I'm feeling like talking to you, I will, but I might blow it off. But put yourself out there. You got nothing to lose. You don't know what talking to that one person might bring you later, because they may be that person that can make or break anything that you're doing, or make it a reality for you. So, as was the case with Dan, he's connected me to a lot of people and vice versa. So just talking to people and fostering those relationships is just, I think, just one of they say relationships makes the world go around, makes people successful. It's not always what you know, it's who you know. So make sure you put yourself out there, talk to people, and listen to their story. Don't be too good for anybody, and give them the time, because you
I
never know.
love that you said that. I love that you said about that. Listen to their story, because everyone has a story, and you don't know where people are. If they're struggling, if they've got things to offer, and you don't know if that guy you're talking to is literally the owner of an airline, and really wants to hear your story as well, and can add value to that. That's a great answer, Andrew.
Thank you.
Look, team, thank you so much for both coming to the show. Thank you for sending the Launchpad over, Andrew, and Dan, connecting us. It's brilliant. I don't blow smoke. I really meant that before. I'm really excited about what you're doing and helping others. And if I can help in any other ways of connecting you guys as well, with other people, then definitely let's do that. But thank you both for sharing your story, both for being so open, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Damien. Appreciate you having us. It's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure and an honor, man. Really can't thank you enough for all the time that you've given us in just today's session, but also in my previous session, and then just your willingness to be a connector and a catalyzer, man.
Thank you, guys. That's brilliant. It's just great to share good people's stories, and I think we've done that one justice. Hey, I'll hit pause. We'll have a conversation, but thanks again. Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former Special Forces operator, and check out my new project for 2023 at hownottodie.com.au, where I've combined all my Special Forces training and police officer experience to help others. Thanks for watching.